Hello, everybody. This is Mike History 2, and yes, I'm actually back. I'm not dead. So, this will hopefully be the last video in the History of Australia series. Now, after I'm done this video, my channel is going to change. Not in terms of like content, like I'll still be making history videos, but I'll tell you more about those changes in another video. But this will be the last of the videos. Well, I guess yeah, the last of the kind of videos that usually see on this channel. And after that, I'll tell you how it will change. I'll also tell you what I've been up to. Um, so yeah, let's get on to this video about the history of Australia. So where last time, which I don't even know if any of you guys even remember that long ago, but I made a video about the history of Australia, obviously, and it was about the gold rush, how Australia got rich. So I'm going to take off from where I left off now. I'll do just 1 minute, I promise, of uh, areas of places where gold was discovered, and then I'll get on to the history. So, in South Australia in 1868, gold was found at Gawler by Job Harris, and more was found at Uluru, that's a weird name, in 1870, in Waukaringa in 1873, Titupa in 1886, Wadnaminga in 1888, and Torkula in 1893. Now, going to the west in Western Australia, wow, what an original name, on Christmas Eve 1871, gold was found at Charters Towers by Jupiter Mossman. Okay, weird name, but that's a great Christmas gift. And in 1872, more was found on the Palmer River. In 1873, at Port Douglas, at the Hodgkinson River in 1875, at Mount Morgan in 1882, at Croydon in 1886, Cooktown in 1890, Cohen in 1900, and Alice River in 1904. So the impact of this was that the city of Darwin was established in 1869. Now back in Western Australia on July 4th, 1885, Charles Hall and Jack Slattery found more gold at Halls Creek. In October 1887, Harry Francis Anstey found some at Southern Cross. The next year, Francis Gregory, N.W. Cook, and John Withnail found gold at Pilbara in 1891. Michael Fitzgerald, Edward Heffernan, and Tom Kew found gold. Finish off, Arthur Wesley Bailey and William Ford found some gold in 1893 at Coolgardie. And finally, Paddy Hannon found gold at the Greenough River also that year. Okay, so now I'm done with the gold. Let's get on to some real interesting history. So, in 1895, women were allowed to vote for the Parliament of South Australia. In 1897, Catherine Helen Spence became the first female political candidate. And in 1899, women were allowed to vote in Western Australia. Now, the unification of Australia began in 1890 when representatives of the 6 colonies and New Zealand had met in Melbourne and called for the union of the colonies. In 1895, 5 of the colonies elected representatives for a convention, and in July 1898, the bill was put to a series of referenda in 4 colonies, but New South Wales rejected it. In 1899, a second referendum put an amended bill to the voters of the 4 colonies and Queensland, which was endorsed. In March 1900, delegates were sent to London, where approval was sought by the Parliament. Now, the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act was passed on July 5th, by the House of Commons and was signed by Victoria, Queen of the United Kingdom and Empress of India. On New Year's 1901, the federal constitution was proclaimed by the first Governor-General of Australia, John Hope, 7th Earl of Hopetoun, with Australia becoming an autonomous colony with its capital in Melbourne and its parliament opened by the heir to the throne, George. The first election was held in March and resulted in a victory for the Protectionist Party over the Free Trade Party, with Edmund Barton becoming the first Prime Minister. Now, one of the first laws passed was the Immigration Restriction Act 1901 to restrict Asian immigration. Australia was immediately at war, joining the Second Boer War that the United Kingdom had started in 1899. By the end of the war in June 1802, 16,500 people had volunteered, and Australia also participated in the Boxer Rebellion as part of the United Kingdom. And just remember, guys, that even though Australia was more autonomous, it was not completely independent, and so still had to join all the wars the UK did, just like Canada. By the way, if you want to learn more about that, watch my History of Canada videos. But anyways, in 1902, British New Guinea was transferred to Australia, and it was renamed Papua. And after the Papua Act of 1905, this became official. Now, the very last gold rush in Australia was caused by the discovery of gold at Tarnagula on November 6, 1906, and that ended the around 60-year gold rush in Australia. Now, when the United Kingdom joined World War One in August 1914, Australia automatically joined since it was still part of the United Kingdom and sent 416,000 volunteers, or between one third and a half of the eligible fighting population. So even though this doesn't sound like a lot, that's a huge percentage going to fight. Now, this war caused much suspicion of foreigners, with 40% of the Germans being arrested in Australia and 700 deported after the war. But with Irish, Chinese, Oceanian, and Aboriginal Australians also being suspected. Now, during the Gallipoli campaign in 1915, which Australia is famous for, 8,141 men were killed in 8 months of fighting. And after this campaign, most were sent to fight with the rest of the British on the Western Front in France. In July 1916, at Fromelles, during the Battle of the Somme, 5,533 were killed or wounded in only one day. Two bitterly fought and divisive referendums were held in 1916 and 1917 to decide whether conscription was necessary, with Prime Minister Billy Hughes supporting it in order to maintain military strength. Most of his Labour Party opposed it. On October 31st, 1917, one of the last cavalry charges occurred at the Battle of Beersheba, which eventually forced the Ottomans to withdraw to Palestine. By the end of the war in 1918, over 60,000 Australians had died. Now, as a reward for their sacrifice, Australia conquered German New Guinea and Nauru, which became known as New Guinea. Unfortunately, many of the returning soldiers brought home the Spanish flu pandemic of 1919 that killed 12,000 Australians. After a migration campaign, almost 300,000 British people moved to Australia in the 1920s. In 1927, Canberra became the capital, and the Northern Territory was divided into North and Central Australia. Now, the next year, on August 7th, Fred Brooks was killed by Japanunga, an Aboriginal man, not a Japanese man, at Coniston before being chopped to pieces by 40 people. On the 15th, Bruce Chapman and William Murray, the chief protector of the Aborigines, arrested Paddy Gar and Woollingar, who had tried to come to trade with him and who he believed were involved in the murder. After Woollingar tried to escape, he was shot, kicked, and tied to a tree. Murray then attacked a group of 23 Warlpiri at Ngundaru, where 5 were killed. He then captured 3 boys and beat them in order for them to lead him to the rest of the Warlpiri. But since this would have been betrayal, they smashed their own feet. But despite being crippled, they were still forced to lead Murray. They cited 4 men, 2 of whom were captured and 1 of whom escaped but was shot. They then encountered 20 more Warlpiri, and after the women tried to escape, the men stood their ground to defend them. They were then shot at, with 3 of them dying. And later on, he met 4 other groups and killed between 17 and 70 people. On August 24th, he captured a man called Arkir Kura, and then collected Paddy Gar, and then marched 390 kilometers to Alice Springs. And when they arrived on September 1st, they were charged with the murder of Brooks. 2 days later, they left for, this man Murray left for Pine Hill Station to investigate reports about cattle spearing and returned with 2 prisoners 10 days later. On September 16th, Henry Tilmouth of Napperby Station shot and killed an Aboriginal he was chasing away from the homestead. On the 19th, Murray again departed, this time under orders to investigate a non-fatal attack on the person of a settler, William Nugget Morton. Imagine your middle name being Nugget. But anyways, at Broad Meadow Station by a group of 15 Warlpiri people who were also in the same area. On August 27th, Morton had left his camp to punish Aboriginal people for killing his cows. And at Boomerang Water Hole, he found a large Warlpiri camp, and the Warlpiri decided to kill him. During the night, they surrounded his camp, and at dawn, 15 men armed with boomerangs and yamsticks rushed Morton. His dogs attacked the Aboriginals, and after breaking free, Morton shot 1 and the rest fled. From the station, on September 24th, a party consisting of Murray, Morton, Alex Wilson, and Jack Cusack led 3 attacks in which 14 more Aboriginal people were killed, but it's likely that there were more. At Tomahawk Waterhole, 4 were killed, while at Circlewell 1 was shot dead, and Murray killed another with an axe. They then moved east to the Hanson River, where another 8 were shot. The party now returned to Broadmeadows to replenish their supplies before traveling north. Now, no records of this patrol were kept. According to the World Period, this patrol encountered Aboriginal people at Dingo Hole, where they killed 4 men and 11 women and children. They also rounded up a large number of Aboriginal people, like cattle, before cutting out the women and children and shooting all the men. In all of this, over 100 were killed at 5 different sites. Now, the reason I'm talking about this was because this was the last major incident in the Australian frontiers, the Frontier Wars, which finally ended in 1934 with the British/Australians having won. And after this, there wouldn't really be any war between the Aboriginals and the settlers. So in 1931, Northern and Central Australia joined to reform the Northern Territory, and in 1934, Heard Island, Macquarie Island, and the McDonald Islands were given to Australia.